Welcome, everybody. Welcome at the webinar House Journey. And welcome at Stefania Finance. It's a very important evening this evening because for me, it's the first time that I'm able to host you guys on this webinar. What are we going to do this evening? A webinar for first-time buyers. My goal is that everyone gets informed on the process and the steps we take before getting yourselves your first own home. But also how a mortgage works and what the importance is of having a financial advisor on your side and a good real estate agent to make a perfect team to get you that first house without any troubles and make it a pleasant journey. Now, why do we do this? It is a little bit based on my own experience. Before I started working in the finance industry, I also had the idea of buying my own place. And when I wanted to be informed, I stepped into one of the offices for a financial advisor and I asked them, can you help me and inform me on what to do and how to prepare? And the answer was, did you already buy a property? I was really set off. What did they mean with that? Now I understand why she asked that question. The reason for it is because you first secure the house in the Netherlands and afterwards buy a property. But I didn't know that by then, and she didn't explain it to me. So I was a little bit annoyed, to say the least. I would really like you guys to not have this same experience, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Buying your own place. In the Netherlands, the goal is first to be prepared. Do your homework. That makes the total journey much easier. We'll come to that one later on in this webinar. The process. How does it work? When you did your homework, your first steps would be to look for the right property. Regularly, you do that on Funda. You find yourselves the most appealing place. That is usually a nice picture, good sunshine, a perfectly cleaned house, and then you make an appointment. When you step into the house, most probably is not that nice weather, but this is the moment where you start to be a little bit more picky. Take your measuring tape with you or a marble. When you do a marble and you think that floors are a little bit sloped, put a marble on the floor. You can see that. Those tips and tricks, they do work. This viewing is still a superficial viewing. You're not allowed to look into any drawers or make a real inspection of the property. But still, this is the moment where you start expressing your interest to the property. You make a bid. If you do make your bid, make sure all the conditions are into this bid. What do I mean with conditions? Well, I mean the amount of the property you would like to bid on, but also how much time do you need to secure the mortgage for this property or a technical inspection? You do need to inform the seller on those parts because it will be part of your purchase contract. If you do not include it in your bid, it will not come back at the later stages, and I can tell you it will bite you. When your bid is enough and your conditions are good to go, the seller will counterbid you. And when everything's fine, you will have an agreement. And at that stage, we talk about a gentleman's agreement. Gentlemen's agreements are still to be reached. You can walk away, the seller can walk away. At this moment in time, you're in the position to make a technical inspection. Please do so, because you do not know what the condition of the house is about. Remember, I told you, you're not allowed to look in any drawers. When the technical inspection is good, you're up for the next step. Next step, purchase contract. In the purchase contract, the bid you agreed upon is mentioned, but also the conditions, because there's nothing preliminary on this contract. Spoiler alert, if you want to breach a contract in the Netherlands for a purchase, either buyer or seller, you need to pay the other party a penalty. And that penalty is 10% of the purchase price. Did I scare you guys enough? Okay, now you know why it's so important to take in these conditions subject to mortgage, because you do not have a mortgage yet. Once this procedure is ended, both of you signed, the seller is not in the position to back out anymore unless this 10%. You're not in a position to back out. Oh, wait a moment. Yes, you are. The first 3 days after you signed the contract, you are still legally allowed to walk away. We call this the cool-off period. When you're walking away, it is fine. They won't like you, but it's law. It is allowed. After those 3 days, you're in the position to apply for your mortgage. Once we've done that and we've done our homework properly, we're going to submit our application to the bank, and we've been talking about it, and the application will be approved. If it's not approved because there are some items that pop up at that moment, then in that case, it is very important to hold on to the deadlines we've got. Because if we enter those and we cross them without knowing, then you're up for the 10%. This moment in time is very important. You have the right financial advisor on your side, because this financial advisor will secure with you those deadlines and make sure you don't cross them, so you could be penalized. Another important item in this complete procedure is your buying agent. And I'll come to the item of what to look for in a property, but it's very important that when you make your bid to the property, it is in the near of the purchase price or the listed price. I'll come to that. So once everything is done, once everything is settled, your mortgage is secured, we still have one step to go in the procedure, and that is telling the sellers that you're okay for buying. Telling the sellers you're okay for buying, you do by submitting the 10% deposit. This 10% does have a relation to that penalty, but now it's not a penalty. It is a securing you deposit at the notary. You don't lose that money. The notary will safeguard that to settle your final invoice at the end. If you do not have that kind of money, or if it's not in your possibilities to free that kind of money at that short notice, no worries. I can arrange for you a bank guarantee. And again, those are items a good financial advisor will take care for you. And then it's the wait until you go to the notaries. In the Dutch system, you both meet first at the property, do an inspection. Is the house fine? You meet at the notaries, you first sign your transfer deed, the sellers leave, and then you stay with a small party of people at the notary to sign your mortgage deed. And from there on, your mortgage starts. So having set this procedure, it is first about securing the property and then applying for your house. It's a little bit the chicken and the egg. How do you know what your eligibilities are for buying a property? And that's why the homework comes in. But why do banks not give you a pre-approval when we're forced to do some homework? Well, that is all about the house. And let me try to explain that procedure by explaining you the 3 pillars of assessment for a bank. What do banks do? They assess your situation upon 3 pillars. Who is buying? What is your financial situation? And finally, the house. Yes, the house is a very important topic. Who is buying? What the banks want in the Netherlands is that you are registered in the Netherlands or going to be registered in the Netherlands. They also would want you to be able to stay in the Netherlands with a long-term goal. Being an EU citizen, you're fine to go. If you're not an EU citizen, your stay permit will grant you that position to show you if we're good to go or not. There are lots of opportunities out there. Don't let yourselves be expelled by someone telling you it's a temporary stay permit, because there are some options, and please come to me because I'm able to get you into that mortgage. If we know that part, there is still another item very important in that first pillar, and that is your credibility. Now, I know that in the US, in the UK, there is this credit system where you first get yourself a loan and you show to the bank that you're really good for repaying on that loan. In the Dutch system, please don't do that. No loan is the best loan. Keep it cleared. But how can you check? Well, in the Dutch system, we have this Bureau of Credit Registration. You can log in to that page and you can really check how your credit history is. My advice, make a copy of that track record, make a copy of your passport, make sure the edges are really good visible, and keep it in a folder in your computer. It saves you time and hassle when a financial advisor asks for it. Now we've talked about pillar 1, and I do believe that everyone is okay on it. But if there is a hinge, please inform me. There are opportunities out there to clear that. Getting to your second pillar, the financial pillar. This is the pillar where we calculate your budget, your maximum loan to income. How does that work? In the Dutch system, banks are looking for security, long-term guarantees. How do you provide that? If you're in an employment and you have an indefinite contract, the bank will love you. If you're not, no worries, there are opportunities. We look into your track record 3 years back, or we ask your company to provide you a statement of intent. And what about the self-employed with us? No worries, opportunities are out there as well. You don't need a track record of 3 years. Sometimes a lot is possible based on a future perspective that you'd have, or getting back into the history you got in your degrees. Again, it's tailor-made advice, but we are able to look into it. Rule of thumb, 4 to 5 times your income you're about to get as a mortgage. When we know your budget, we don't know yet on your obligations. Well, we do because you did your check on the Bureau of Credit Registration. So we're able to see what we need to deduct from the income you've got. When this picture is completed, we know your loan to income. We know the budget you're allowed to loan from a bank. But be aware, you do need some savings. In the Dutch system, you're allowed to loan up to, and there is pillar 3, 100% of the value of the property. So that means items like transfer tax, fee for a notary, valuation report, your advisors, those would need to come from your own means. So you do need savings. Sometimes notaries and real estate agents do ask you about the origin of your savings. Let yourselves be informed. It doesn't have to be a complete booklet, but getting the right documents, preparing it on time saves you a lot of time and hassle and annoyance. Let your financial advisor inform you on that. Once we know this second pillar, we can safely say we know where you stand, but we don't know what you've bought yet. In these crazy times, what we see is that people list a property and you're forced to go way beyond that listed price to get yourselves a proper bid and secure the property. Now, that is for sure the reason why a bank does not provide you a bank guarantee, a pre-approval up front. Let's take an example. If a property is listed for, let's say, 500,000 euros, and you're looking for the property and you're forced to go way beyond and you're putting in a bid of 550. Forced. With that, I mean there is a lot of interest in that property. The bank does take in that situation, but still they do not take your 550 as being the value of that property. What they want is a valuator valuing this property. This valuator will take this price that you've done and look into the environment if it's a fair price. In some occasions, the valuator will claim you made an emotional bid because the property isn't worth this 550. In that case, you're not allowed to get a 550 level, but you're only allowed to get up until that level a valuator claims. If you did not have that subject to mortgage in your conditions, You cannot walk away anymore, and you need to put down that money, or you're losing a 10% penalty. Those items in these times, make sure that you've done your homework properly and be supported by a good team. Am I in pillar 3? Is that it? No, not yet. In some occasions, people don't buy themselves a property, but they buy an apartment. When you're buying an apartment, you buy together with a lot of people complete property. And with all those people, you are responsible for the maintenance of that property. And here's the catch. There is always an owners association, and you always make a contribution to this owners association. The thing is, the contribution is not always covering the expenses needed. Banks don't like that. And I can tell you for sure that even if you tick pillar 1 and pillar 2, and if the value is properly, the bank will still deny your mortgage. To prepare yourselves for such events, let us view beforehand what you're willing to buy and make that assessment. Saves you a lot of trouble. Okay, having you told what the pillars of assessment are, what does the difference make for you to go to a financial advisor? Because now we know your eligibilities, we know the procedure, but how does it further work? In the Dutch system, when you look for a mortgage, you're allowed to get a loan and you're forced to repay. That is to protect yourselves, but also everyone else, to make bad decisions and being forced to sell your property with a remaining debt. So nowadays, the repayment schemes are annuity or linear, and it's too much to explain it today, but it differs per person which one is best fitting you. But what about this really popular interest paid only? In some occasions, it could fit you, but remember, there are really disadvantages because you never repay on that loan. So you're not going to build up equity. And now the market is high, but what in 5 or 10 years, market is dropping? It could make a difference. Let yourselves be advised. Now we know the repayment. How does mortgages in the Dutch system further work? A mortgage usually is repaid in a term of 30 years. You don't have to. You're allowed to make reimbursements. Sometimes, with some banks, it's penalty-free. So that is a good reason to go to a financial advisor who is not tied to just one bank. Depends on what is fitting you. Repayment in 30 years could be reduced. Schemes, repayment schemes, we talked about that. The interest is very much also an impact on how much you pay. What we see is the interest is really low nowadays. So it could be very appealing to fix it for a very long time. But maybe this isn't fitting your situation because you aim to sell the property within 5 or 10 years. It depends on your situation. When we've done all those details, is that all to talk about? No, not yet. Because where there is an income and there is a future, and we all want you to become 100, there could be threats. Your partner could die or you would come to disease. How do you cope with that? What is important for you? How much cover is there by your company? Another item could be disability or unemployment. Those are subjects we look into closely, we see what is arranged for you, and maybe or maybe not, we can take further measures to secure that part. Once all that is settled, we have the complete package for your mortgage. But there is something nice about having a loan in the Netherlands which is tied to your property, and you can see me smiling. In the Dutch system, we do want you to buy your own house. There is really this support to it. And how does our government do it? They grant you some repayment, a rebate on the interest and the final costs you make. The rebate is only granted if you do a full repayment, so the annuity or the linear. And you always do it in arrear. But also the one-off costs, the valuator, my fee, the cost for the notary, and any other technical inspection. Those are tax deductible as well. So you will get up to a 30 to 40% in return. All important topics where I do think it is important to have the right people standing next to you. Having told the procedure, having told you a little bit on the details of topics to be aware of, how can you know and how can you find the right people supporting you, and why is time of the essence? The right people supporting you. The best way to do it is to see what their degrees are. If they make sure that they take the time for you, if they tick all those boxes I told you about. To look for is someone who has a registration, like being a acknowledged mortgage advisor or a financial planner. But you can also feel, if you go into a meeting, if they ask you the right questions. With a real estate agent, it is important to see whether they're tied to a bigger company, because then you know that their quality is being looked after. Having a team set up, having your homework done, means that you're able to move swift. And this is what we see at these days. You get time to view the property, but basically immediately when you leave that property, you need to make a bid. In that case, it's so important that you have the right team supporting you. You know what your eligibilities are, but also that you are sure that afterwards you're looked after and the important deadlines are taken care of. Now, I've thrown a lot at you, and I know it's a lot of information. Are there any questions? I'm really happy to answer them, and you can put them in the chat. If they're not there, don't worry, please contact me. You can do so by reaching out Stefania Finance, search for my website, or look me at Facebook or LinkedIn, and I'd be more than happy to answer all the questions you'd have. It was really wonderful having this webinar and informing you, and I hope it's not the last time that you've seen me. Enjoy your day.